here in St Andrew's Church on Thursday, the 2nd of November, with Mike and with Nadia and with our jingle. So what, Nadia, what have we just read today?
So the first reading is from Ecclesiasticus chapter 43.
Uh-huh.
And today is very beautiful. So we have the account of the splendor of the sun,
right?
one paragraph, then the moon, and then the glory of the stars and the rainbow. So it's also...
That's great. So it's moon, stars, sun and rainbow.
Yeah, sun.
All happening today. Oh, and I love it when Vera pops in something. It's like, it's relief. It's like, gosh. I also want to say Ecclesiastic has 12 chapters only, but we've come to chapter 43 and it still goes on. Really? Ecclesiastes has 12 chapters, but we've come to chapter Ecclesiasticus. Is that an Ecclesiastes confusion? Because they are two books.
Yeah, but we are reading Ecclesiasticus, also known as Sirach.
Sirach, yeah, exactly, which it does pop up when you do searches and stuff. So you need to be mindful of that. It is beautiful, isn't it? I did like the moon. There was a bit about the moon, about the new moon, as its name suggests, renews itself. How marvelous it is in this change. I love this idea of new things and renewing themselves, bringing in change. Because I always think change is always something that challenges us, and it's always difficult. Sometimes we want to hold on to what's old or stuck in the past. And I sometimes think that Christ is in himself an amazing change. He brings in something new that needs us to really rethink stuff. And we often, I think all of us, often want to hold on to what's familiar or repeat what we did in the past. Sometimes taking that step forward into the unknown is super scary. And that's always like this idea of new, and the idea of this moon is something that renews, regenerates itself.
And it's interesting how there's a balance here. If we think about the moon and also about Christ, so there's a balance of the stability and change, because it's still the cycle, so it always repeats.
Right.
Sun, there's new moon, and then
that's
it
right.
grows, so it's constant, but at the same time it's always moving and always.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really important, because I think that also is the key thing in the fact that we have things like the Old Testament and the New Testament, because you can only really go into the new by being confident about what you have in the past. Yeah. You need the sort of foundation to build on, the shoulders to stand on, which is kind of, I always think, the Old Testament, the thing that gives you the confidence to be able to jump into something new. So it's very important, I think, that you need both those things, because without that, otherwise you're going to get lost when you go into the new. It's like you learn something, you're a student, you learn old stuff, when you're learning, but then actually, because you're young, you go and do something new. But you couldn't have really done it without having learned the old stuff. You need a basis, something to challenge or change, or
and Christ himself, so he's the rock and the cornerstone on which everything can be.
I always think the cross. For the cross, for me, does a lot of different things. But one of the things, because I always think there are two parts to the cross. And for me, one is about two things: old and new, and where they meet is this kind of dynamic place where we need to be. So there's all sorts of things. I always say, and I think this double thing in the cross. I think there's life and death. There's a bunch of stuff, but old and new is one of them. It's really interesting, but it's beautiful, isn't it? And I love the rainbow here. And praises him who made it. Oh, some more stuff from Vera. John writes the moment of Christ being kept. Yeah, we'll come to that in a second. Which is excellent. But
the rainbows. I also remember in our Bible study classes with Malcolm and Edison and everybody else. So it was, I don't remember exactly what it was about. So we were reading something from the Old Testament, from the Genesis, but somehow we talked about rainbows, that they are treated as signs of God.
Right. It's true. It's interesting, because we see the rainbow, don't we, in Genesis, as a promise from God that he's never going to flood and do the big to Noah. And he's never going to do that again. But I love it here. Look at the rainbow and praise him who made it as exceedingly beautiful in its brightness. It encircles the sky with its glorious arc.
And I remember somebody said, lots of people talked about it after Queen Elizabeth died. Lots of people saw there were multiple sightings of rainbows.
Oh, really?
Yeah, across the UK. So it was something quite unusual.
And special.
And special. Yeah, and then people shared stories about seeing rainbows also on special occasions.
Right.
So
That's interesting. There's a whole course of study there.
Yeah.
But rainbows are beautiful, aren't they? And they are beautiful in a time when we can give praise and thank God for the beauty of the world around us.
The creation.
And so we move on to John,
Yeah.
18. Right, this is his betrayal in the garden.
The rest.
Amazing. And I always think it's amazing. I always thought, it's like, well, hang on, don't they know who Jesus is? It's like, surely why do they need Judas to betray him? But I've often thought they probably don't. It's this guy, they've all heard about him, and then the elders of the church and the police, they have no idea who they have to grab in the crowd. So they sort of need they need Judas to point him out. To make sure they...
Yeah, that's so very interesting. Again, I think we don't need a priest to interpret it, because I also found it very curious how they reacted, the guards who wanted to arrest him. So when he said,
yes,
they stepped back and fell to the ground.
Yeah.
So it feels like they were astounded by his power. Like, I don't know. Because this phrase reminded me of icons of transfiguration, actually, when there was transfiguration, when Jesus took them to the mountain and it was transfigured, dazzling whites, and then the three disciples who were with him, the same thing happened to him. So they stepped back and fell to the ground, and you can see it in icons. So this line reminded me of that. So it was like they were also.
Because it is like stepping back and sort of falling down to praise him.
Yeah.
It is interesting, isn't it? But it is a remarkable. I did think that. I hadn't remembered that from reading it before as well. So interesting. You read these passages you think you've read 100 times, and suddenly something pops out. Exactly. It's like, hang on a minute, where was that line before? Or why was I not paying attention? It is amazing. And we have a comment from Vera. John writes the moment of Christ being captured rather differently. He depicts a bit different conversation with Christ in his captures. Also mentioned the name of Malchus. It is true, actually. I did look at that. Actually, I googled this before, and there is this interesting thing that actually the accounts are slightly different. As I believe John is the only person that mentions Peter and Malchus by name, I think. And it's quite a violent episode, and it's sort of bizarre because it's not. Peter doesn't come out very good in that moment when he takes the sword and cuts off the ear. So it's always strange to me that it's sort of included, because it's sort of things you might want to quietly forget. But it's interesting, and I'm fascinated by Malchus. What became of Malchus in later life, and it's just interesting. I feel there's a whole book you could write there. A bit like Master and Margarita's, that lovely passage about Pontius Pilate, meeting Christ. Do you remember the moment when he meets him sort of off stage, not in the Bible? They have this conversation, and Pontius Pilate has this terrible headache, and he's like, why am I having to do this? And the Jews are causing me such a problem today, and this guy's nice, so what's the deal going on here? And then his headache gets better. It's like, I like talking to this guy and I feel better. It's a really lovely moment there. It's interesting.
Curious, this passage also made me think of Master and Margarita.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, what's Malchus' story? Where does he go next? And I love this. Vera says that it's always good to put these readings side by side to make fuller understanding of many moments. Sabbath in the different books of the Bible. Yeah, exactly.
The same events.
It's very interesting when you put things together. You suddenly see connections, and I do think these readings are very well selected by.
Amazing.
By people. It's lovely. And that's amazing piece. And I saw another priest film yesterday. So we saw Leon Marin, which I put in our chat, Leon Marin Priest, which is a famous film by Melville, starring Belmondo, which I really recommend you watch, because it is an amazing story. And it is actually, as some people put it on the top 100 films of all time. Yesterday I saw a new film, which is a sort of a Russian not a blockbuster, but it's a rom-com. It's called Strastью по Matvею. It's Passion of Matvey, who is a young priest in training, an Orthodox priest. And he hasn't become a priest yet, so he's still actually quite inexperienced. His father is a big, powerful Orthodox priest who has come from a long line of Orthodox priests in that family. So Matvey doesn't really have any other choice to become a priest. Now, but it's a lovely story of him sort of struggling, in a way being given too much responsibility too early by his father, who expects too much from him. But the main point of the story is, and I didn't know this, of course, we all know that Russian priests can be married, but they have to get married before they're ordained. I didn't know if you know that. Once they're ordained as a priest, they cannot marry, which means that a lot of young Russian priests in training need to get married before they're ordained. So there is a sort of, I don't want to call it a market, but there's a dynamic of young priests looking for the batushka, looking for a matushka. Yeah? And I hadn't realized it. And there's even a special app for batushkas to find the matushka, and this is beautifully covered in the film. And he's like, and he's this young boy because he's going to take over the church, he's going to be ordained. So his father puts him under a lot of pressure. And he's only a kid. He's saying, you've got to get married by the end of the summer. So he's looking for a bride. So it's a lovely sort of rom-com idea within the context of this particular dynamic in the Russian Orthodox Church. It's a beautiful story, and he talks about, so you go to the seminary where all the women are training, and it's like, do you go and look for the choir singers, or do you go and look for the icon painters? And he said, but the problem is all the other guys are there as well, also trying to find a matushka. So there's a lot of competition. Tinder in old time, I guess, exactly. It's a sort of, and it's a great, the director was actually a priest in training, or he did spend in his younger day, and it's a great film, and it's nice because it's I think it's a bit long, and if I'd edited it, I'd have cut some bits out. I would cut it down to 1.5 hours, and the trailer is great. Watch the trailer; it's a lot of fun, and I think the film gets a little bit too sentimental, Hollywood blockbustery rom-commy, but it's still a great film, and it has a great ending, and the message at the ending is good. I was watching with Nana, and I always know when Nana watches, she's quite critical of films. At one point, she's like, this is getting on too long. I liked it, and then let's just get on to it. And at the end, she went, great ending, because actually there's a very nice, interesting resolution, which I think is very priestly, and it's rather beautiful. And the film sort of does walk on thin ice at points, which is interesting. So I watched it at lunchtime yesterday in a full cinema, I have to say, and it's on wide release, so it's definitely worth watching. And we're going on for 12 minutes. We need to stop. So anyway, but great. Yes, that's called Stras par Matveu. So anyway, yes, good. So thank you everyone for watching. We've actually got 3 people today. Anything else to add? I think we need to stop.
Not today.
Great. Okay. Strastu par Matveu is this new film. It's on wide release and well worth watching. It's fun. Right. Okay, that's all. Bye.
Bye.